station. You probably haven't heard that one on the air for a while. The full uncut version of Detroit Rock City from the Kiss album Destroyer. That was the one that followed up that massive live album that kind of put them on the map completely. And this interview is going to happen. You hear me? We got a guy named Gordon Gebert on the phone with us, and Gordon is a one-time confidant and friend of Ace Frehley from Kiss.
That's right.
And he wrote the book called Kiss and Tell with Bob McAdams, who was a teenage
friend, yeah.
A teenage friend of Ace Frehley's from the Bronx,
yep.
and was also basically, Ace's right-hand man through all the years of Kiss. So these guys have gotten together, and we'll just say it's not exactly a flattering portrayal of Ace or the band Kiss, but some of the stories would be difficult to make up. We'll just say that. So, hey, Gordon, good to have you back with us. And like we said, this interview is going to happen come hell or high water here.
That's it. I'm tenacious.
Yeah, well, we are too, man. We're going to make it happen.
Now, you knew Ace, or you've known Ace, basically in the post-Kiss years, but you're very familiar with the stories from the Kiss years from your co-author, Bob.
And Ace.
Now, who actually came up with the idea of the makeup and the spitting the blood and the breathing the fire and all that stuff?
But that was like an evolutionary process, but it was pretty quick. When Kiss first started out, they were influenced. Gene and Paul were influenced by the Beatles, and Ace and Peter wanted to be like the Rolling Stones. They were like sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So Gene and Paul had more of a cleaner image. But back then, they had bands like the New York Dolls. I don't know if you know of the New York Dolls.
Right, David Johansen.
David Johansen. I used to work with David.
Okay.
After the New York Dolls years. And they dressed it up like transvestites and wore makeup. And Alice Cooper was a big influence also, and he wore makeup. So they took it a step further, and they created these characters. In fact, in the book, there's a picture of their first time they ever put makeup on their face, and
it's a little different.
It looks different. So the makeup evolved eventually,
right?
And then they started getting. They always got together. It was like an individual thoughts and ideas. Like Gene, was elected to do the fire breathing trick. Nobody wanted to do it. Gene got
right.
A magician came in and says, "Who wants to breathe fire?" And they all were like, "What?" So there was plenty of times Gene burnt his hair and stuff like that.
Right. Now let me ask you a couple of questions here. Why don't you give the real names of the original band? Because I didn't know there was a couple of Pauls in the band, actually. But also talk about how the band, quickly after they hit it, or not even after they hit it big, but while they first started, it quickly divided into two factions.
Yes, it did. Actually, all the Paul Ace's name is Paul.
Paul Frehley.
And then there was Paul Stanley.
Right.
And then Paul Caravello was Eric Carr.
Now, Peter Criss, the original drummer, that's his real name?
Yeah, Crisscoula.
Crisscoula.
Yeah, it's Crisscoula.
Okay, now how about Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons are both Jewish, but they changed their names so they wouldn't be Jewish?
Paul Stanley is Stanley Eisen.
Stanley Eisen.
That's his last name.
That's not exactly a rock and roll name.
He changed his name a few times. His name was Gene Klein, and it was Chaim. He was born in Israel.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and then he came to New York with his parents. They were concentration camp survivors.
Now, the amazing thing here is that Ace, many of the stories, you paint him in kind of an unflattering way. I guess he did it himself, but him and Peter actually referred to Paul and Gene as the two Jews who run the band.
You can't say that on the air.
Well, I mean, we're just saying. I mean, we can't use the expletive they use, but that's how divisive it was in Kiss.
They were very anti-Semitic, and Ace is of German descent, and he was into Nazi war memorabilia. And there's a real funny story about Bob and Ace dressing up in Nazi uniforms, and they broke down Gene's door, and with all these Nazi uniforms on, crashed, and they just put up with the antics. It was part of the chemistry of the band, whether it was good or bad, but it was part of the chemistry.
But, also that, like Mark said, it led to a lot of infighting. And it's basically Peter and Ace against Gene and Paul. And you mentioned that it got so bad that they couldn't even stand to be in the same room together unless they absolutely had to, like autograph sessions or rehearsals, that type of thing.
Or photo sessions, whatever, or even just playing. Ace wouldn't even show up for sound checks. He would just come to the gig, and most of the time he'd come late, like the typical musician like I was for your radio show.
Right.
But Yeah, usually they didn't want to be around. Only after a year together, they really weren't getting along.
Yeah, that's amazing that it would happen like that and disintegrate so quickly. But now, and those occasions when they would have to be together, when they were going to rehearse, when they were going to do a photo shoot, who would make the call to get everybody together? Would that be Gene, or would a manager do that?
Pretty much Gene and Paul were the the bosses of the band, and then they would tour managers or the band manager, Bill Aucoin or whatever, they'd say whatever photo sessions they had to show up and this and that, and later on Ace and Peter just stopped showing up.
Man.
They wanted all the glory without doing the work.
Right.
It takes a lot of work to be a rock star.
Absolutely.
And people don't realize that. They think it's all it's all a piece of cake, and it's really not.
Well, and I think that thinking was even more prevalent in the 70s. That, hey, rock and roll was all one big party, and we're all having a good time, without really actually realizing how much work really went into it. Now, we had Gene Simmons in here in the studio maybe about a year and a half ago, and in person, he was a very intimidating guy. Did he pretty much run the show with the band? Did he intimidate the other guys?
Yeah, he did. He likes to have that persona. I'm not intimidated by Gene at all because I pretty much know what he's like through Bob and and Ace. But on the outside, anybody that doesn't know Gene personally would be intimidated by him.
And he's a big guy too.
He's a big guy. He's really nice. He's really very intelligent. Knows what he wants in life. And I have a lot of respect for Gene and Paul because they went through all the lean years with Kiss.
Yeah, right.
I mean they went through really bad years, the good years and the bad, and they kept it together. So I have all the utmost respect for those two guys. And then, Ace and Peter were the guys that stepped in dog doo-doo there, and they lucked out, but they don't put the work that Gene and Paul put into the band.
Now, with all the water that's gone under the bridge and all the past troubles, were you amazed that they could get together for a tour as recently as they did?
I was quite astonished,
how do you think?
knowing Ace so well, and I'm sure they're having their difficulties in the inside, but on the outside they're showing it well, and I'm glad for them actually, and I'm looking forward to that new Kiss reunion album.
Right.
I really want to hear what Ace could do because he is a phenomenal guitar player, great musician.
Right.
I mean, there were times where Ace was passing out drunk, stoned out of his mind, and in half a coma, and you put a guitar in his hands, and he could still play it like a genius.
So I think that's part of the problem.
It was a minor miracle. It really was, and it was part of the problem also. Yeah.
Now, do you think on this reunion tour, which has been going on for about 2 years now, it came through Phoenix a while ago, do you think Ace and Peter are getting smaller chunks of the pie this time than Gene and Paul?
Oh, yeah, definitely. They're hired hands.
They're employees, basically.
They're employees, I mean, Gene and Paul are not going to give up their rights to Kiss when they put in, like I said, all the lean years.
Right.
And that I can comment on. I mean, we still have mutual friends and good sources, and they call me up and they say, "Oh, guess what Ace is making?" And I'm like, sometimes I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And then they say, I get all the inside information and stuff like that. But any information that since I became friends, I don't comment on. I only comment on things I actually know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you wouldn't be able to tell us what Ace is making a year these days.
I've been told, but I'm not going to repeat it. So.
Okay. I'll tell you what, Gordon. If you'd hang with us for a few minutes, we got to do a couple of commercials.
Cool.
We have Gordon Gebert on, and now the book Kiss and Tell, which is you've written with Bob McAdams. Is it available in stores, or is there an 800 number?
Yeah, it's getting on the shelves right now. Barnes & Noble and Tower. You can order it at Barnes & Noble. Make sure it's Kiss and Tell. There's a book of a similar title out there, but it's Kiss and Tell by two authors, Gebert and McAdams. Because people have been confusing it with another book with a very similar title.
Okay.
And if they can't get it in the bookstore, if they have a hard time finding it, and people that have